Well, Jennifer, welcome to my community, and thank you very much for making the time to speak to me today. I was so looking forward to speaking to you about this topic. With the first time we met, I was intrigued by your topic, and I think and believe that my community will really benefit from hearing from you. So I'll give the community just a bit of background. So Jennifer and myself met a few months ago. We are doing the same course, which is called Digital Course Academy. And I'm currently designing my group coaching program, and Jennifer is currently designing her digital course. So some interesting things coming your way, and also what Jennifer is creating. And like I said, when I heard about Jennifer's topic, I thought that we all can learn more about this, and it will definitely help us in our corporate roles and also with our career progression. So Jennifer, tell us a bit about yourself and also your story, please.
Oh, thanks, Jeanette. And I really want to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to have this chat with you today. And I hope that whatever I can offer might be of interest and use to your community. So I'm really delighted to be here. So my story is that I spent most of my career in corporate communications and public relations. And I worked for organizations of all different sizes. But along the way, I experienced burnout. And it wasn't just one burnout, which was the last one where I ultimately walked away from corporate life, which I know is simply not possible for everybody. But I had two prior burnouts. So, that was sort of the third one. And that was the one that really that was the straw that broke my back for sure. And from there, I started to look at, I had to take some time. I had to recover physically, mentally, and emotionally. I had to recover my relationship with myself and with my husband in particular, and then also with other members of my family. And it gave me an opportunity to look at the situation, gain some perspective and to examine like what actually happened here. And it also gave me a chance to look at all of the different aspects of my life that had led to that point. And I could see a lot of assets and a lot of, sort of interesting threads that I have now woven together into this offer that I call authentic communication. So I've brought my professional background in corporate communications, public relations. I have been a professional communicator for more than 25 years. So that was a big piece of my background. But I'm also trained as a coach, and I've done quite a bit of coaching work. I'm trained as a yoga teacher, and I'm a longtime yoga practitioner. I'm a very serious meditator. I am a pilgrim on the Camino to Santiago de Compostela. And so I have just a variety of different angles to my life. And what I've done is I've tried to find a way to weave those together and bring them to make an offer and to be of service to others. And that's sort of how the idea of authentic communication came to be.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that you were a yoga teacher as well, that you had that. Oh, excellent. So Jennifer, your company is called Dayspring Communication. How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciated the opportunity to tell you that story because, well, we just had Mother's Day, and the origin relates to my mom. So after my first burnout, again, at that point, I also took a step away from work. I was working in a big PR agency, and I just took a step back from that. And I was really fortunate that I was offered the opportunity to do consulting work with a big company. And so I started a little business. And my mom was very supportive at that time. And she and I were talking about my new business and what I should name it. And she said, well, tell me what it is about communication. What is it about communication that you really love? And this continues to be true. And I hope that this is what I'm conveying in my work today. I really believe that communication is a way for us to illuminate ourselves, our lives, and each other. And so my mom came back with this name Dayspring, which is a sort of an old English antiquated way of saying sunrise or dawn. So I really latched onto that, and it has been my company name now for a good number of years. Even when I went back into corporate, I kept it, I kept it going. So then I had something to lean into when I came out of corporate again.
Yeah, I love it because it's so fresh and it's action. It's like movement in that as well. And now that you say that it's linked to, sunrise, it's like a new start as well. I love it.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I just love it. And this was also something that intrigued me when we initially started to speak. And that was the connection between authentic communication and burnout. Can you explain or talk to that?
Yeah. Well, so I think it might be helpful to just say a little bit about authentic communication and the three principles that I use in authentic communication. And those are be, listen, and act. In my work with authentic communication, I always start from the premise that good communication begins with the communicator. So we want to develop a stronger level of self-awareness. And I work with my clients to cultivate self-observation, excuse me, and to be able to become more aware of their own habits and patterns and tendencies. And I think that awareness is really critical. I'm going to come back to that in a second. The second principle is listen. And when I work with my clients in that around listening, of course we want, active listening. I like to call it intentional listening. And the intention of the listening is to connect with the other person, to listen not just for comprehension, but also for connection. I think that our relationships are so vital to our health and well-being at work and outside of work. And so listen is where we begin to work on those connections. And then act, that's where we get into the nitty-gritty, the skill sets of communication, but mindful communication, communication that grows out of that sense of self-awareness and out of the connections that we have with each other. So when we talk about burnout, people who are suffering, and now I think that the suffering is really peaking. It's quite intense. It's a very, very intense time for people. We could talk about that, but I think most would agree that those who are working in organizations are feeling pressures that they have never, combinations like a cocktail of pressures that they've never experienced before. So when we talk about people who are, on the brink of burnout, the way that authentic communication can support is, first of all, this emphasis on relationship. I want to begin with that because my philosophy is that every organization, every team, every company, every family is made up of human beings who are in relationship with each other. And those relationships are either nourished or depleted by the quality of communication. So if we have better communication, we're going to have stronger relationships, and that's going to mean more excellence, more impact, and a more health in the system. So the first is that the authentic communication sits on this philosophy around relationships, that being in relationship is more important than being right. And then the second piece is awareness. I think that when I look back at my own experience, there were behaviors that I was choosing that were red flags. Blowing up in the middle of the office at a junior staffer and making him cry. It's a pretty good indication that I'm off balance. I'm not really, in my right place, working until God knows what time, and then deciding that the only reason I really want to go home is to have a glass of wine.
Mm.
That's not really me being at my best self. Something is off balance there. So becoming aware of those behaviors can help us to see that something's off kilter here. And the B part of authentic communication is just so critical for that. And that's why I spend a lot of time working with my clients on self-observation. I think it's really vital.
Yeah, I think that that's a very interesting point, because I shared with you also 2 days ago just my experience in 2016. And 2016 was a fantastic year for me career-wise. We had amazing projects that I was working on. But I also started my coaching business on the side, and fell ill a few times that year. But now committed to all these different things, I just couldn't rest or couldn't take a break because I overcommitted myself. And then in 2017, I was completely in a horrible state, health-wise, mentally, starting to get panic attacks, which is not a part of my life. It's not something that I suffered with before. And the most interesting part of it all is that I didn't stop. I just made the plan to start at 8 o'clock instead of 8:30, and to work really much harder, and then maybe work until 6:30, 7 o'clock. And that was the solution that I had to get myself out of the situation. And that just compounded the problem until I came to a place where I was completely ill and had to stop. So, and I find that's interesting that we don't notice the signs, and also don't always have the courage to stop. It almost, for me personally, it felt like I was maybe lazy, or couldn't hack it, or couldn't take the pace or the pressure. So it is very hard to admit that you are at a point where it is time to change things.
Yeah. 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 It's so true, and I think that, um, so the mindset, right? That, I mean, and we're all, it's the classic boiling frog,
Yes.
but we're all frogs and we're all in the same pot, and the water has just been getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And so I think that there's this, collective mindset that if I just do more, if I just work harder, then I'm going to get there. And I have to say that, I know that the work that I do it's kind of subversive, because I do have a strong background in communication, and I'm teaching people how to communicate and why communication is important for themselves and for their jobs. And I am also coming with a particular perspective that says we have to start with really coming to know ourselves. And in that self-knowing, the next thing is to accept what we find. And that requires a different kind of mindset. It requires courage. It requires a willingness to say, it doesn't have to be like this. I can do something different. And that can be terrifying. That can be absolutely terrifying, because when we're faced with change, we don't know what's going to come next. And there's this old saying about the devil known is better than the devil unknown. So our mindset, so I like to help my clients to step into a stretch zone so that they can feel like, okay, I'm ready to try something else, to examine and to experience some other possibilities. And one of the possibilities that I'm thinking a lot about right now is the concept of resilience. And one of the things that I'm hearing from people that I'm talking to about resilience is that there's a perception that resilience is somehow about doing more. And that resilience is somehow about being better, making these changes. Like, I've got to muscle through this too. And I would just like to invite the idea that resilience could be about relaxing. Resilience could be about being still, about surrender, about awareness and acceptance, and that it could be something really soft, that it doesn't have to be so, about like girding myself for the world, but it could be the sort of, the partner for that, which is just, being in a state of relaxation and ease. And how do we get there?
And that's great. And I'm also thinking about the point that you made about accepting. So I asked also in our preparation, I sent you a question which I want to just share with you and the audience as well. It is, what is a technique that you can recommend to us to manage our burnout? And when I read that question, it triggered me a little bit. And maybe that's also just me understanding or being self-aware. But my question was to manage our burnout. And I think that in a way, subconsciously, I believe that we all will face burnout. It is inevitable, and it's more just about how to manage it rather than to avoid it. And that was a light bulb moment for me, just in my perception and my perspective on burnout. So that's something I need to think about and reflect on. But Jennifer, what technique could you share with us that could help us to be more authentic in our communication, to manage our burnout, to be resilient, to accept what we see? How can we do that?
Yeah. Well, it's I think that, thank you, Jeanette, because I do want to say that I really agree with you. This concept of managing burnout, then that it's sort of like it's always present. There's some aspect of it that is always just either beneath or above the surface. It's just sort of always there with us. And so how can we almost predict it? How can we say like, oh, this is getting a little hot, this is getting a little intense here, and I need to do something different. So it probably won't come as a big surprise to you that my number one tool for cultivating awareness is meditation or mindfulness. I Over the course of my experimentation and experience with different aspects of self-awareness, there is just nothing that I have found to be more potent than a regular meditation practice. And one of the techniques that I have learned, which I have found to be incredibly helpful, is actually listening. Really listening, using the sense of listening to tune into what's going on, because for me, the objective of meditation is not it's not just it's not like about sitting in lotus position, and kind of reaching nirvana. It is an opportunity to get quiet and to be with myself and to really observe the things that I take for granted. So I did a silent retreat many years ago, and the technique that we practiced was listening. It was so incredibly powerful. So listening, to have a period of meditation, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes, it really doesn't matter, but to consistently have a period of meditation, and then perhaps to practice in this way, where first I listen to what's happening inside myself. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this differently, because I think that this other way is more effective especially for new people. First, I'm going to listen to what's going on in the ambient world. I'm going to listen to what's going on out there. And then I'm going to just gradually bring that listening closer and closer and closer until I really can hear what's happening inside myself. Now, on day one, the only thing you might hear is the truck going down the street, and that's as far as your listening goes. But maybe over time, with practice, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, we can come to that place of really listening to what's going on in our hearts, what's going on inside our own bodies, and what's going on inside our energetic bodies, our hearts. So that, I think, is an approach that might be useful to people.
That's amazing. Absolutely. And you're right. Whenever I do my meditation, because I struggle with my meditation practice, that is a development area for me. And, it's like hearing the fridge go off and then you hear the truck or the door. And that is really to be mindful in the moment. Something very small like that is mindful in the moment. And so my last question would be, what does it look like to listen to on the inside? Like, what do you have a picture for us?
Yeah. Before I answer that question, Jeanette, can I ask you, what do you think is the biggest barrier for you with meditation?
Spending the energy. It's like I feel extremely exhausted before, and now to have to spend the energy to focus on staying mindful. It's an effort for me to stay mindful because I'm everywhere, what's coming, what happened, everywhere but the present.
Yeah.
And so it takes energy and focus for me to stay in the moment, and that is my resistance.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. It's great that you can have that sense for that. So one, are you able to practice regularly? Do you practice daily?
I practice probably 4 to 5 times a week.
Okay, great.
5 to 7 to 8 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. That's so great. That's so great. Well, I think it's just beautiful that you can see where the challenges arise for you. And I think it's interesting, that my experience is that with consistency, that sense of effort, it transforms into a gift of energy and of focus. Because when our minds are busy thinking about the future and the past, that actually saps us of a lot of energy. So the practice of meditation. So I would love to hear back from you in another month or so and see how it goes for you. And so I do want to answer your question about what can it look like on the inside when we're listening on the inside. I'm not going to kid you. It can look like and feel like pure chaos because our thoughts they tend to run rampant. But this is the opportunity where we can engage in learning to train. I mean, our brains, our minds are so powerful. And in our meditation practice, we can learn to train our minds to be better servants than masters. And then the question opens up, it becomes a very philosophical conversation about then who is the master, if not the mind? And that could be a topic for another podcast. But what I want to say is, I want to invite people to venture there, go there, even if it is chaotic. Don't expect that listening to your heart is going to be like laying in a spring meadow with, daisies and butterflies. It can be very, very uncomfortable. And the more we become comfortable with the discomfort, the more the ease can arise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's excellent advice, and you've motivated me now to just push my meditation practice to the next level, because you're absolutely right. It is about listening and realizing that this is what's going on for me in the moment, and that's where you get your signals that maybe I'm out of integrity or I'm moving into a direction that's pushing me outside of where I should be, towards more burnout and overexerting myself. That's excellent. So, Jennifer, where can people find you? Where can they read more from your work?
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. Well, I'd love for people to, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Jennifer Wasmer, and the company is Dayspring Communications. I also have a website with a really nice, robust blog, and that is Dayspring Communications with an S at the end, .net. So I'd be very pleased for anyone who'd like to find me in either of those places or both.
That's excellent. I will also make sure that I put the resources in the comment pages and also on the blog so that people can just click and go. It's much easier as well.
Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's always for me so energetic and energizing to speak to you. And thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge with us.
Such a delight to be with you, Jeanette. Thank you so very much for having me, and thanks to your listeners.
Thank you. Well, isn't Jennifer just great? I love her communication style, and I really appreciate what she shared with us today. For me, what stood out is that even if meditation is something that's difficult for me, or maybe you feel meditation is a bit woo-woo, or you don't have time for meditation, that it really helps us to listen to our bodies and our brains, sharing the messages to us of where we are and helping us to listen to where we need to go. I also love what she mentioned about thinking to herself that it shouldn't be like this. There must be a better way. And if you have that message in your mind, or if that comes up for you sometimes, I want to encourage you to listen to that, because that was also exactly the words I told myself in 2016 when I had my tough year, that it's not supposed to be this hard, or it's not supposed to be this difficult. I'm not supposed to feel this tired or this sick just to be able to progress in my life and my career. So all the very best. Have the best week, and I'll speak to you again next week. Bye for now.